Dear God, today as this session opens, we pray that your presence will be before us and everyone who serves in the decision-making process of our city. We pray for direction which will lead our city to be strong and unified. May we continue the legacy of our founders. May we be granted this day the wisdom to make decisions which will be for the good of our city. We also pray for your special blessing on all those who are working to transform our city and make it a better place to live and work. Amen. And now if you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Councilor Martin.
Here.
Vice Chairman Donza.
Here.
Councilor Mercia.
Here.
Mayor Murphy. Councilor Nguyen.
Here.
Councilor Elliott.
Here.
Councilor Kennedy.
Here.
Councilor Leahy.
Here.
Councilor Laurie.
Here.
8 present.
Thank you. First item on the agenda is the minutes of the City Council meeting of March 5th, the Finance Subcommittee meeting of March 5th, for your acceptance.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Motion to accept by Councilor Kennedy, second by Councilor Mercier. Any questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. Motion's carried. Next item on the agenda, we have a resolution to maintain the Verizon Repair Center jobs and innovative technology work in Massachusetts and to reconsider moving jobs out of the Commonwealth.
Move approval.
Motion to waive the full reading by Councilor Laurie, second by Councilor Noon. We have a motion, second reading by title. In City Council, resolution to support maintaining Verizon Repair Center jobs and innovative technology work in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. A motion to approve the resolution by Councilor Elliott, second by Councilor Laurie. Any discussion? Do we need a roll call? Roll call, please.
Councilor Martin.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Donza.
Yes.
Councilor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy. Councilor Nguyen.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilor Leahy.
Yes.
Councilor Laurie.
Yes.
8 yeas.
Next on the agenda, we have communications from the city auditor, January and February grants report. Motion to accept the report by Councilor Laurie, second by Councilor Elliott. Any discussion or questions?
Yeah.
All right, all those in favor of accepting the report signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion is carried. Next, under the city manager's agenda, we have I'm sorry. One more item under auditor. There's a communication regarding February budget reports. Motion to accept the report by
So moved.
Councilor Kennedy, second by Councilor Leahy. Any discussion or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion's carried. And next on to the city manager's portion of the budget. We have the communication from city manager, responses to city council motions and requests. Motion to accept the report.
Yeah, I have a question, actually.
Can we have, I'll just have a motion by
Okay.
Councilor Leahy, second by Councilor Laurie, question by Councilor Leahy.
Thank you. On the manager's portion, the communication for my motion on the plans for the chambers, through you to the manager, is this something that we think we're really gonna do in July, or is it still, where is it at this point, would you say?
Well, I think that one of the things we need to do is it's going to be a budget issue. We have to get it through the budget process. And also, we want to schedule it in a way that, one of our big priorities during the summer is to get into the schools. So we want to be able to have our workforces out there. We'd like to get the work done here in July. We also have the value of doing it in July is that I would assume the thought process was that we're on the summer schedule, right? And we'll be on the summer schedule in August and September as well, so we could squeeze it in around those meetings. So it may not all get done at once, but it will take place over that period of time.
Okay, I just had, because just for a couple of suggestions, we do have the TV studio at the Rogers School that we could use if perhaps there was a night where this was unavailable. I did want to also maybe just ask that if I could be part of the discussion, if we are able to do it, just on how it gets done and with, we can either do it through subcommittee or however it needs to get done. But I'd just like, maybe the council would have a little input on colors and what we're doing with the rug and as far as just cleaning everything up, so.
I like lilac.
You look very nice in lilac, Counselor. So.
All right. But I would appreciate that if we're afforded, however you want to do it, if you just want to call us or whatever, but be nice to have some input on that. And I appreciate the updated answer. There was a mistake on the last one. This one's all set, so thank you.
Counselor Elliott.
So the request was to find out how much it is. Is the cost of this $25,000? That's what, Mr. Manager, approximately was that what the report was? I don't have it in front of me.
Yes. 22,000, I think.
So it's 22. We're going into a tight budget year, and I think it's I think it's admirable, but isn't there any way that we can do this in-house? I mean, certainly, I know the last time it was, painted, I guess my question is, how can we accomplish this without, if there's no money in the budget for this, and we're looking at next year, is there any way we can do this at, in-house, that it's not gonna cost $22,000?
I think a large chunk of this is in-house.
Is it?
Right. But it's obviously the shades are something we purchased. Some of the other work here, I don't think we have in here a carpet. The carpet would be between $14,000 and $16,000. Obviously, that's not. Again, we're buying mostly supplies here, and perhaps some overtime that goes with that. But we obviously we're going to look to bring this cost down some. So.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
I was trying to get Councilor Leahy to offer his services to do the painting, but.
I would work with the union guys.
But we will bring in color chips to have the council vote on that. But
Okay, before we proceed, you'll bring in a funding plan before this proceeds?
Yes.
I mean,
it'll be
it's
included
just
within
a
the
lot.
budget. We'll have something in the budget.
And it's a
on
beautiful chamber. It's an admirable motion, but
Absolutely.
all things considered, it's a lot of money.
this. Yeah, and if I may, Mr. Sure.
Mr. Manager.
It is a very good motion in terms of, and Councilor Leahy and I talked about this last week when we kind of walked through it a little bit. We've been in the process over the last several years of fixing up the building, painting sections, rehanging portraits of former mayors. We're in the process now of reopening the window that opens onto the main stairway so that it brings light back in there the way it was designed in its original architecture. So we're doing a lot of those things. So this chamber really is a key part of that.
Right, and,
So-
and out of the existing budget, it's not gonna be a separate appropriation, it's out of building and repair funds
Exactly.
on an annual basis. I see. Okay, thank you.
Council Laurie.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. I have a question. I know there's been a lot of groups formed over the years to raise money for municipal buildings, not just in Lowell. I know the towns do it. I know we did it to the library a couple of years ago. Has there ever been a commission formed in this city to look at refurbishing, say, City Hall, the chambers? One of the things I'm really thinking about is the pictures, the artwork of all the mayors. I think we're the only city, I've read that once, I think in the country, who has that lineage all the way back to its original mayors. And we have, we don't have the city managers, but we do have all the mayors from day one till now. And I don't know if there's ever been a committee or formed to look into restoring the pictures and the things like that. I was in the mayor's reception room for a function, I think, last week, when you hosted the neighborhood groups. And one of the pictures is in pretty bad shape. And I know it's very costly to do, but it's just a question. I don't know if that's ever been done.
We've redone some of the portraits, little by little. I think we're hoping to get them. We've used different sources of funds to do that. I think some of the portraits I think were done through some state money that this library had. I think the Cultural Council had some money that we've put into this as well. So we have done some of that, and we'll obviously we'll continue to try to plug away at that. We do have the first two city managers have portraits.
They do.
Yes.
I'm not even gonna go there with the rest. But, it was just something, because they're stored in the attic, or they're stored somewhere in City Hall. The heating system with the cooling system here, the humidity, it's just not good for the pictures. And it's just after listening to the conversations, I was just curious. Thank you.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you to the city manager. The budget that you gave us, that does not include carpet, does it, for the chamber?
Not.
Okay, but you did get a price on the carpet?
Right. Yeah, it would cost $6,000 to replace the existing carpet with a high quality tufted carpet. It would cost between $14,000 and $16,000 for a higher quality woven.
Right.
So
I guess, I think this is a good motion. I think that, the city council chamber, if you look around, it looks a little tired. And if we're going to do everything else and not do the carpet, then the carpet's gonna look worse than it does. It kind of blends a little bit better now than it would be without that. So, and I understand that we won't be doing this until budget time, but if there's money available, it would be good to do the carpet as well, would be my opinion. I think that makes sense. Thanks.
Anyone else? No. All those in favor of accepting the communication placed on file signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion's carried.
Could I ask one quick question?
Councilor Leahy.
Thank you. To put in for a suspension of the motion, of the
Rules.
rules, to bring up the County Square Bridge, because we had a quick meeting on that last night. Should we do it under the manager's part, or at the end, or?
If it doesn't require any action by the council, I can call on you during reports part of the
Okay.
agenda.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Now, next on the agenda, under communications, and this one will also be a public hearing, so we probably should just accept it. Communication, report and recommendation from the planning board. Ray, proposed amendment relative to narcotic detoxification and/or maintenance facilities. This is just the communication from the planning
These are
board.
on file.
Motion to read and accept by Councilor Mercier, second by Councilor Noon. Any questions at this time? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion's carried. And the next item is Number 9, ordinance, create position and salary of Director of Elections. First reading, in City Council ordinance. An ordinance creating one new position of the Director of Elections and establishing the salary in the Elections Department. The City Council, by virtue of the Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 43, Section 105, has the authority to create and/or delete positions. Be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Lowell as follows. The Code of Ordinances of the City of Lowell, Massachusetts, hereinafter called a code, adopted by the City Council on December 23rd, 2008, is amended, is hereby further amended as follows. 1, the following position and salary is created in the Election Department. 1, Director of Elections, annual salary $40,847.34 through $44,224.10, which is Tier 7, 21 hours per week. Number 2, all provisions of the Code of the City of Lowell is amended, which are not inconsistent with the ordinance shall continue in effect, but all provisions of the said code inconsistent herewith are repealed. 3, the ordinance shall take effect upon its passage in accordance with the provisions of Chapter 43 and 40A of the General Laws of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. This shall be going to a public hearing on March 26th at 7 p.m. Motion to refer to a public
So moved.
hearing by Councilor Kennedy, seconded by Councilor Mercier. Any questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
When's the public hearing?
It's on March 26th.
Mr. Chair. I think we'd propose to have that public hearing on April 2nd.
Okay.
We're being asked to push it out a little bit further than March 26th, so just bear with me for a minute.
April 2.
All right, so we'll schedule a public hearing for April 2nd, Tuesday, April 2nd. All those in favor of referring this to public hearing signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion's carried. Next, we have another ordinance, amend Chapter 266-90, parking meter rate. This will also be referred to a public hearing.
On March 26th.
All right. This one will also be on April 2nd, 2013 at 7 p.m. In City Council ordinance. An ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances of the City of Lowell, Massachusetts, the code with respect to Chapter 266 entitled Vehicles and Traffic. Be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Lowell as follows. The Code of Ordinances of the City of Lowell, Massachusetts, hereinafter called the Code, adopted by the City Council on December 23rd, 2008, as amended, is hereby further amended with respect to Chapter 266 entitled Vehicles and Traffic as follows. Section 266-90, parking meter rate is hereby amended by adding the following. For the purpose of regulating parking on the streets designated in this article, and the time whereupon parking is permitted, the parking director is hereby authorized to provide bags or other devices to cover meters for the purpose of prohibiting parking at the associated space when requested. The rate shall be $10 per day per metered space where parking is prohibited for any portion of the day. All provisions of the Code of the City of Lowell as amended, which are consistent with the ordinance, shall continue in effect, but all provisions of said code inconsistent herewith are repealed. This ordinance shall take effect upon its passage in accordance with the provisions of Chapter 43 of Massachusetts General Laws. Motion to send to a public hearing by Councilor Kennedy, seconded by Councilor Martin. Any discussion?
Yes.
Councilor Mercer.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I do have a question regarding this. I don't know what the significance of the association of the orange no parking bag to the particular fee. I don't know, I'm going by what I think. Whenever I see an orange bag over a meter, I think no parking. Now we're talking about we're gonna put an orange bag over the parking meter and charge $10? Well, how
Mr.
do
Manager.
you figure this? I don't get it.
The idea here is that we have situations where people contact us. Generally, if we're putting the orange bags out to prohibit parking, obviously there's no one to charge. The idea here is, or what's happened in the past is, it's never been codified in any way that if someone needs to block off spaces for deliveries, or in the case of an L, when they're going to close off parking spaces on the bridge,
Right.
that they are preventing the city from gaining the revenue from that. It particularly is relevant, as I said, if someone is moving out of a building and needs to take over a parking space or two, we lose the revenue for that day from that parking meter. So they're essentially buying the meter for the day by buying the using the orange bag, and the city is made whole as a result of that.
So that's completely what this means.
All it is.
So when we have the public hearing again, we may forget about that, so I might ask the same question again. Because if we could, I'm not supposed to form an opinion, but, okay, I might bring it up again. Thank you.
Councilor Leahy.
Thank you. On that issue, when you do put the bags up, is the ordinance going to have any type of penalty for people who park there that aren't supposed to be parking there? Because on the way to the meeting, I don't know if Anel's setting up barricades tomorrow morning, but they bagged all the parking meters over by Middlesex, yet everybody was parked there. So I don't know if, if the ordinance is going to have something to say about that.
Mr. Manager.
Right, when those would be, those essentially will say no parking at those spaces. So someone parking in that space that has that prohibition can be ticketed or towed. It's similar, the city of Cambridge does something, they issue signs that you can buy a space for a period of days in some cases to do that if there's construction work going on.
I just didn't know, because obviously nothing's going on tonight, but
Right.
people are just ignoring them tonight, so.
Any other questions? Motion is to refer to a public hearing on April 2nd. We've already got the motion. So all those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion's carried. Being after 7
Mr. Chairman,
o'clock.
could we just do number 11 before we do the public hearing so that Mr. Wilson doesn't have to stay through the public hearings? That's just, that would be pretty, it's going to take 1 minute, I think.
If there are no objections from the council? Okay. Number 11, communication. Appoint Jeffrey S. Wilson, Taxi Cab and Livery Commission. You have the communication from the city manager appointing Mr. Wilson to the commission. Motion to accept by Councilor Mercer, seconded by Councilor Noon. And is there any questions? Councilor Mercer.
I don't have a question, Mr. Vice Chair, but I do have a comment on this very incredible human being who's 27 years old, visually impaired, and he gets around better than I do. Works in Boston, but he utilizes the cab service, so there's no one that knows this better than him, who takes a cab quite regularly for the past 11 years. He typed the letter of intent with no errors, unlike me, who would botch the spelling all over the place, and I can see. So I'm very impressed with the exuberance that this young man displays each and every time I observe him. I'm very impressed by him. I just can't say enough about how people have a handicap disability and it means nothing. They just go on with their life and they don't feel sorry for themselves. They don't act like they're impaired at all. And here I complain about a hangnail or something. So I'm embarrassed by that, but I'm just so at odds with this gentleman, and I move approval. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, we're going to have a roll call on this, please. Motion by Councilor Mercier, second by Councilor Noon.
Councilor Martin.
Yes.
Vice Chair Mendonça.
Yes.
Councilor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy. Councilor Nguyen.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilor Leahy.
Yes.
Councilor Laurie.
Yes.
That's 8 yeas.
Motion passed unanimously. If someone would help Mr. Wilson to the podium.
Hi, members of the council, Mr. Manager. I just want to thank you for your confidence in my service to the city. Right now, I'm on the Commission for Disabilities, and that has been very productive, and it's been exciting to serve the city. So I really appreciate that, and I appreciate the opportunity and the very kind words from Councilor Mercier. I really do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Mr. Manager?
Mr. Wilson, thank you for your willingness to serve, and I know you'll be doing a good job. I know that Mr. Marchand, who is on that same committee, is looking forward to having you there at the meetings.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll now move to the public hearing portion of the agenda. The first item under that is an ordinance in City Council ordinance. An ordinance amending the zoning ordinance of the City of Lowell, Massachusetts by amending Article 12, Title of Uses, and Section 7.7 entitled Narcotic Detoxification and/or Maintenance Facilities. We'll begin with those wanting to speak in favor. Welcome.
Vice Chairman, members of the council, George Theolides Jr., 133 Market Street, Lowell. I guess I should start by saying that's a tough act to follow. This is a wonderful young man, and I think it's a great choice, and appreciate that. I'm here this evening to ask for I think, an important amendment to the zoning code. And I tried to get a memo out. Hopefully, you all received it, and I'd like to call your attention as I try to give you a brief rundown of what we're seeking here to the three exhibits that I put on there. One is the map of the city showing the LI zones, which are the zones that are the ones in question this evening. Hopefully you all get that. Okay. Secondly, is a section of the code 7.7, which talks about the type of treatment facility that I'm talking about here. And what's important about this is for you to understand that these are the requirements for such a facility to operate in the city, and the proof. And the third is the current use chart from the city zoning code, which I've tried to make a little easier for everyone to understand just exactly what we're dealing with. This is the section of the code that talks about whether or not a particular use can be maintained in a certain zone. Right now, what this chart tries to show you, or does show you, the chart at the bottom shows where these types of facilities currently can ask, and that's the important thing, seek by special permit to locate a facility. The chart up above that is what we're proposing by way of changes, and that chart shows that the yellow items are areas, the yellow districts are areas now where these types of facilities can seek a special permit under the current zoning law, and the pink one is the light industry that we're asking be added to this. Now, the reason for this is my client has been operating a facility in the city for more than 30 years, very successfully, very well operated and whatever, but unfortunately his lease is running out and he's got to find another location. So he's been looking around the city, and one of the areas that he's hoping might be a future site is in an LI industry. For whatever reason that the LI industry was put in as one of the, was not put in as one of the spots where somebody can petition the zoning board, and other areas that include many residential areas, I don't know, but that's what it is now. So when I spoke to the people at the Department of Development Services about this and went over it, I was asked specifically if I made this request to the council that I please take the DMU zone out of consideration for these types of districts. That would take out the entire downtown area. And then, as we talked some more, they said it made sense to take as many of the residential areas out as we could. So that's the reason for asking that we remove 6 places where these types of uses can take place and just add the one light industry area. So I've been to the planning board, I've explained it to them in somewhat the same fashion as this, and the most important thing I want you to realize, and that's why I put chapter 7.7 in there, is you are not voting tonight to authorize any facility to operate in any of these zones. I'm only asking you to authorize them to have the ability to file for a special permit to the Zoning Board of Appeals. When they file for the Zoning Board of Appeals, they have to meet all these requirements. And it's also reviewed by the Planning Board as well before it gets to the Zoning Board. So there are many layers of protection, shall we say, with regard to whether or not these facilities are good operating facilities. So that's really the thrust of what I am proposing for you tonight. I hope you understand what I've tried to explain to you and that the chart helps somewhat, and I'm certainly glad to answer any questions that the council may have after they hear from any other remonstrance on the subject matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? In favor? Seeing none, we'll now move on to the portion of public hearing. Those wishing to speak in opposition. In opposition. In opposition. Seeing none, what is the wish of the council? Councilor Mercer.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Again, I will say that I'm not a professional when it comes to this type of issue brought in front of us, but earlier, under the communications from the city manager, was a report and recommendation from the planning board. They held a public hearing on this very issue on February 21st to review this particular ordinance. No members of the public spoke in favor or in opposition during this public hearing. So a motion was made and seconded to recommend to the City Council to adopt the proposed zoning amendment, as it will further restrict the zoning districts from which a narcotics detoxification maintenance facilities are allowed, and it also provides stronger control on the potential impact on residentially zoned districts. And the planning board voted unanimously 5-0 in support of this motion. So having said that, I will support the recommendation of the planning board. Thank you.
Councilor Noon.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I think this is the right zoning for this facility. As Councilor Mercier indicated, that you have an endorsement, full endorsement from the planning board, and said by Attorney Alighty that this is not an okay to have it in this location. They have to prove themselves before, again, go with the plan to the planning board, and then the final board that make determination whether or not they can have and decide for special permit is the zoning board of appeal. I sat there, and they're going to give you a whole host of condition if they see a concern. This is not the last stop that just allow them to have in this light industrial and or industrial is the right place away from our downtown. So I agree with the planning board who unanimously vote in support of this, and I plan to support this tonight as well. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Councilor Laurie.
Thank you. There's been 2 public hearings, no opposition. The planning board voted to approve it, but there's been no opposition from anyone. I'll support it.
Anyone else? We need a motion to approve the change. Council Mercer approved, second by Councilor Elliott. Do you have a question, Councilor?
Yeah, I want to speak on it.
Councilor.
That's right, okay, thank you. So has the city taken a look at this, Mr. Manager, at this proposal, and they've weighed in on it? I know the planning board did, but...
Yes. They've been working with our planning staff, and Mr. Flagel, do you want to speak to this?
Sure, thank you, Mr.
Filling
Manager.
in the role of Adam Bakey is...
Yes, I'm filling in for the Assistant City Manager at this point. The Attorney Alighty's and his clients did submit their proposal to Development Services. It was reviewed by the department, and we support this change, in part for the reasons that are stated in the Planning Board's letter. This would remove any possibility of any sort of these narcotic detoxification facilities from any of the residential zones within the city. The light industrial zone appears to be, based on the uses that exist there now, the more appropriate zone for this type of use. And so we, after reviewing all the proposed changes, the Development Services came out in support of this change.
So currently, these clinics are not allowed in the light industrial zone, correct?
That's correct.
So that is a change. I think it's a good idea to make sure they're not allowed in the residential district, as well as, also can I just point out the residential retail district. How come this didn't come before? I know there's a relocation coming forward, and that's the impetus behind this, correct? Why aren't we just looking at, well, I guess you can't just look at that one piece of property. You have to do it in zones.
That's correct.
Wouldn't we want to create just a separate zone for this?
Well, I mean, I think we have to look not just towards this one particular facility, as I think has been mentioned before. There's issues as to whether or not we can effectively prohibit, which we're not allowed under law,
Right.
to prohibit this. So changing one particular parcel to a particular zone for this use could be seen as an effective prohibition, but I would refer to the city solicitor to the specifics on that. But getting back to your earlier issue, I think that while this change is appropriate, part of the impetus for this change is that narcotics facilities are currently defined as in the general industrial healthcare use, and this creates a separate use for them, specifically for for specific narcotic detoxification facility. So it allowed us to kind of narrowly tailor as Mr. Elides began and under the Development Services recommendations did, the appropriate zones in the city for it, and I think that's the result of this ordinance.
Does this fall under the, I think this is a good idea. I just want to make sure we don't have, when one of these detox centers or methadone clinics go in, are people in that area going to come back and say, look, this is zone light industrial. These facilities really can't be considered light industry, can they?
It was the question too, Counselor. You want solicitor?
The solicitor was going to answer.
City solicitor, please.
One of the things that we have to keep in mind also is a point that Attorney Elides had brought up at the onset, and that is that none of what is happening tonight is going to have any effect on the independent review on a case-by-case basis of any of these particular facilities. So all that will happen, and then the other thing we have to be wary of is, with respect to being too narrow, avoiding instances of spot zoning.
So we feel comfortable that in the future, when someone goes for a special permit, this can be considered light industry, and we're doing.
It would be consistent with that, correct? Under the table of uses.
Okay. Is there any limit to the number of facilities that, I mean, there are 11, there's 11, I guess, zones in the city that are classified as light industry. Is there any limit on the number of these facilities that can be located in the city? Because they're privately owned, right?
I believe they're privately owned. The section of the ordinance that has previously existed and is not being affected now has limitations on the amounts that can exist within a certain distance of one another. And I believe that portion of the ordinance hasn't changed, so that portion of the zoning ordinance remains consistent as it is now. So I would be cautious about trying to restrict the number for purposes that I alluded to earlier of trying to prohibit them if there's a need. But that being said, I mean, our ordinance says if you have one, there can't be another one within a certain distance, then in effect to try and keep them from clustering together and creating some sort of negative area.
I just want to get my concern out, that once, if we approve this, I understand there's a special permit place in process. There's a special permit process in place now, which by all accounts seems to be pretty effective. My concern is now we're going to have, they're going to be located in light industrial zones, and does that make it, is it easier because there typically would be neighborhood opposition, naturally. Is this going to make it easier or afford, private companies to come in and say, well, all we have to do is go into light industry? There's really not neighborhood groups are going to be up in arms. And, is this going to, I don't want to say facilitate, but invite more of these facilities to come and locate in the city, which we have one. That's fine. I just don't think that, one is good.
Right. I think at the end of the day, what this ordinance does is assign the narcotic detoxification facilities to the zones in the city that are most appropriate for that use. As to whether or not another one would come in, that would be up to the kind of, I believe they have to have some sort of certification from the state. They also have to go through the special permit process, and the process outlined in the ordinance is fairly rigorous to demonstrate not just the need for them, but also to control the kind of ancillary side effects of those things. So it's our position that this amendment, putting them in the light industrial, but more importantly, taking them out of the 6 residential zones, is more appropriate for this use than the existing ordinances right now.
So under the current ordinance, and either you, Mr. Elides, can that proposed location on Stedman Street, could you apply for a special permit in that location?
No.
You could not?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Counselor Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a question. I don't know if it's for planning and development or for this is sort of, but of the 4 different zoning districts that will allow this by special permit, one of them is regional retail. What was the thinking behind including regional retail? Why is that a good idea? Was it just like that to begin with?
Yes, didn't change.
Yeah, the regional retail district is a district that this has been approved for since the council authorized the existing zoning ordinance.
And so do you think it's a good idea to keep it that way?
I think that, again, regional retail is one of those zones that has a wide variety of uses. I think that this use could be considered appropriate for a regional retail district, subject to the special permit conditions. Again, it's not, nothing that happens here tonight would say that it goes in a particular place. But I think that I think there's a legitimate reason why it's in the regional retail district. I think that this sort of use.
What is the legitimate reason why it's in the district?
Again, you're talking about individuals going to a particular facility to obtain a particular product. I mean, that's generally a retail use. While we may have concerns about being strict about this particular product, and I think the special permit requirements, the specific zoning ordinance requirements which aren't changing for this use still exist. When you're talking about need for parking and access for customers, multiple individuals going in and out of the facility, those are generally the characteristics of a retail use.
Okay, thanks.
Councilor New.
Mr. Chairman, is the Attorney Alighty memo in support of his petition and attachment, including map that identify different zoning, is it going to be part of the record, or?
We can make it part of the motion.
Yeah, could we have just part of the record? Thank you, sir.
Okay, so we'll amend the motion. Actually, we need a motion to accept the ordinance by anyone. Councilor Mercier, second by Councilor Laurie, to accept the ordinance and attach the memo in support of it and place it on file. Anyone else wish to speak on the motion? Councilor Elliott.
Can I just ask, Mr. Attorney Leidy, why is the current business owner, why are they moving from,
Because
which is a good thing, I
good
think.
question, but the very simple reason. We've been very successful in the city of Lowell and in our downtown area, bringing in new people, new businesses, et cetera, and the current landlord wants more money, plain and simple.
Okay.
And they've been there in that particular location for over 15 years on that lease.
Right.
But their lease runs out. The landlord wants a lot more money because it's in a very high Hall Street now, very, you know what's going on down there. It's just exploding with the university and everything. So it isn't that they don't want my client, it's that they want more money. So, okay. So then you still got to go through the special permit process for if this is adopted on Stedman Street, right? Correct. There are other locations they're looking at, but they can't even negotiate for this one until we're given permission to at least try to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Roll call.
Councilor Martin.
Yes.
Vice Chair Mendonça.
Yes.
Councilor Mercier.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy. Councilor Nguyen.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilor Leahy.
Yes.
Councilor Laurie.
Yes.
That's 8 yeas.
You have a second public hearing. In City Council ordinance, an ordinance creating one new full-time position of Animal Control Compliance Officer and establishing the salary in the Police Department. Mr. Manager, do you wish to present something first?
I'll be very brief in my presentation. Essentially, what's happened here, and Mr. Marchand is handing out a chart that speaks to an issue that I know we discussed at a prior meeting regarding dog licensing revenue, and this isn't necessarily from just the perspective of dollars being lost, but the fact that all indications are that we are not capturing all of the, we're not licensing all the dogs the way we believe should be. The council has been has been working diligently over the last couple of years with the administration on a number of animal-related issues, which led to, as we tried to work together on this, that we would make certain changes. For instance, we transferred the animal control function from the DPW to the police department, and we've seen very good results from that. We believed, and the council believed, that this is more appropriate in the police department than the DPW. We have currently 2.5 dog officers. We believe that there's a need for 3 animal control officers. And that if you look at our peer communities, generally the communities that are about our size have 3 dog officers. This will allow us to fully cover the weekends that we think are important. But the other part of this, and Sergeant Coyle is here from the police department, who's assigned with the animal control function in the police department. The other part of this is that we have 2 animal control officers, but the administrative functions that go to the issue of making sure that the proper licensing is being done and we're getting every dog properly licensed, that is something that is continues to slip through the cracks, as evidenced by the amount of revenue that we bring in, which is one of the lowest of all the communities that responded to the information that we sought. And so the combination of better coverage, we think that we'll pick up the revenue to pay for this position through more aggressive action to ensure that dogs are properly licensed, and that allows us then to properly manage the dog issues in the city. So those are the sum and substance, and again, Sergeant Coyle is here if there are any questions to go beyond that I cannot answer.
At this point, we'll open the public hearing to those wishing to speak in favor. In favor. In favor. That portion of public hearing is closed. Now for those wishing to speak in opposition. In opposition. In opposition. That portion of the public hearing is closed. Councilor Laurie.
Thank you. Is the reason why we're down in revenue because we're not collecting, or we charge less than other communities?
Mr. Manager.
It's a function of we just don't get as many licenses as other communities.
Well, I think we pay $10. I think I pay 10. What do the other communities get? I mean, I look at Sherborne, I never heard of the place, and Boxford. Those are high-end communities, I'm sure. People buy dogs for their kids. I just don't see taxing people for their animals. It's a tax. A lot of people are single, they have a dog. A lot of people, they lose their jobs and they have to give up their animals, and it's tough. I have 2 dogs and I get a license, but I'm wondering if we're going in the wrong direction. And again, the question's out there. What do these communities charge to license their animals?
We'll grab some of that information. We actually have some of that, but it's roughly the same. Everyone charges roughly the same amount for their dog license. They may charge 15. I believe some communities charge that, but it's more a function of a city our size. When you compare us to obviously Sherborne has a lot of dogs. They have it's a small town actually right next to Framingham.
Okay.
But if you look at, for instance, Worcester, they're a little bit larger than us. They bring in more than we do. in terms of, but on a per capita, this is all on a per capita basis, they're bringing in, they're getting more than we are. So it's all weighted for a population.
I guess my question is, it's not about a race to the top of collecting fees. These animals are part of the family. A lot of people, it's their last resort is to give up their animal if when it comes to income. And again, a lot of these animals are bought because people have kids. And I know the idea of a license is that people go and have their animal vaccinated. But how many cases of rabies did we have last year?
Yeah. Again, this issue that we're pursuing here tonight is not related to the license fees. This is related to having proper animal control, proper animal control function that the City of Lowell and the Lowell City Council over the past number of years has sought, that we have good coverage, we deal with the problems. This is really just the purpose of giving you this is to measure what we're, how many licensed dogs we have compared to other communities, and we don't have, we believe we have more unlicensed dogs than we should, and this position would allow us to deal with that.
And I agree with you. I bet we do have a lot of unlicensed, and I bet some people just don't do it because they don't want to. I'm concerned about the people who can't afford it, and that's basically what it comes down to. I don't know. To me, it's almost like a race to the top on fees. And as I say, I understand it's important that people get licenses for their dogs because it proves they've been vaccinated. But, I'll think about it, but it's just one of those things I just have a hard time agreeing with. Thank you.
And of course, we're just creating a position. We're not changing the fees at all. Okay. Councilor Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's my point exactly, that this doesn't touch the fees. This is just adding an enforcement person, which we've had issues with here over the years. Calls for people to go out, and there's not enough staff available, or there are people that know how to beat the system too. They know when the dog officer's not working, or after he leaves, the unlicensed dogs come back out. So I don't view this as an issue with fees. It's more about enforcement and really about fairness, because some people do bring their dogs, do get their shots, do pay the fees, and this is really to try and make sure that everybody does that. So I don't really think it has much to do with the fee. It doesn't change the fee at all.
Councilor Elliott?
Thank you. Could I get the deputy
Sergeant.
or sergeant? How many calls do you get per, I like to say per year, I don't know if you know that, but just on a daily basis for animal control, whether it's dogs or?
Since January 1st, we've had 250 calls.
So 250 calls since January 1st, that's 3 months.
It's 2.5, 3 months, and it covers 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. There's not much coverage on the weekends.
Okay, that was going to be my next question, Sergeant. You get calls on the weekend, I mean,
If we get calls at
dog
night,
issues probably, I'm going to presume that there are more dog issues on the weekend because people are home and
we have more dog calls on the weekend at night than probably during the day, because people are home, they come home from work, and they're home all day on the weekends. And we don't have that coverage right now with nobody working the weekends or on, at night. So that resorts to overtime.
overtime for
If
the
we have an emergency call, we then have to pay overtime.
case. And it does happen, I'm going to presume.
Yes,
So right now, there's 2 full-time,
yes.
and are they both on the same shift?
One works 7 to 3 and one works 9 to 5.
9 to 5, 5 days a week. What will this person do? Will this person provide coverage on the weekends?
Yes. The goal of this job is to provide coverage at night. It's going to be flexible, provide coverage at night, on the weekends, and also be able to, so we don't have to take somebody off the street to follow up on the rabies certificates that get sent into the clerk's office from the veterinarian's office, to follow up on the licensing, to follow up on the new program, the new software that we just purchased to track all this stuff, and then be able to, for the irresponsible pet owners that are out there that don't pay their fees, that don't follow up, they get like tickets after tickets after tickets, we'll be able to bring them over to Lowell District Court to hear on complaints for ordinance violations. They'll also be able to follow up with the nuisance dogs and the dangerous dogs that we apply for.
Okay. And I think you just hit on kind of a significant issue, which is why I'm going to support this. We do have irresponsible dog owners in the city, and I venture to say that there's a lot of them. And I'm not sure which council mentioned it, but, and they know they can get away with it. You know, even people, whether it's, you know, barking dogs or people putting their dogs on a leash or whatever the case may be, when they know there's not enough resources, they are going to try to skirt the law and avoid it. So I do think it's a good idea. I do think we need more enforcement in this particular area, as we have seen over the last several years. I don't like adding anything more to the budget. I'll probably find something, Mr. Manager, to cut when this comes in. No, but I do think this is an important position that we do need, because otherwise, if it is an emergency situation, they're either being called in or we're taking a police officer to go and address that, correct? And I'm sure you can't address all of them. How many do you figure you addressed in the last 60 days of those 250, or, excuse me, the last 3 months of those total number of calls? I'm going to presume you can't get to all of them.
No, what happens is that when they go to the calls, and if it's during the night or a weekend, they end up trying to follow it up during the week, but they get so bogged down with other stuff, they can't follow it all the way through. So if they issue a citation to an irresponsible pet owner, the citation then sits. We have no avenue right now to follow that up to either receive payment or prosecute them at the district court level. And to add to the licensing part of it is, we by no means are trying to, by increasing licensing, what you're doing is you're going to decrease costs to the city, because if we can pick up a pet on the street for a $10 fee to buy a license, we can then return that pet home. So instead of costing that pet owner hundreds of dollars for a kennel fee, because we bring the dog to the kennel because we don't know where to bring it, we can bring the dog immediately home, and then it'll only cost that person $10 for that insurance.
Okay. All right, so I think this is important service. I do, Mr. Manager, and I, you know, having an additional person on makes sense. It will pay for itself. I know it's not a revenue, the purpose is not for revenue, but I do think it's important that we put these ordinances in place, that we provide the enforcement mechanism. And dogs, there's a lot of dogs in the city, and people are getting more dogs. So with that, I think it's clearly I do think it's a public safety issue in large extent. So thank you for the answers, Sergeant, and I'm going to support it.
Council Leahy.
Thank you. My question was answered. I just wanted to make sure that this was gonna be a off hours and weekend type of position, because a lot of times you do call and nobody's available and they have to call them in. So, thank you.
Council Noon.
Yeah, if I could have Sergeant back to the podium, please. You indicated that since January 1st of this year, there was 250 calls. How many of those calls of non-compliant dog owner we took them to court and have that being heard by the court or the clerk, or the judge or the clerk?
0.
How many out of the 250 calls?
0. Nobody's been brought to court yet. We have 30 to 40 outstanding citations right now that are outside the 21 days that haven't been paid or followed up on or had anybody to actually address the issue.
Going forward, should we really enforce the ordinance and cite somebody and take them to court? Who is going to go to court on behalf of the city?
The compliance officer would go to court on behalf of the city, or myself could go to court.
Would that be an extra overtime cost
No,
for the
because the
city?
job would then have flex hours. So the court is willing to schedule, say in 30 days, they'll say on a Thursday, we'll hear these cases. So that officer, they could be shift to the day shift to go over to court. So we don't lose the staff on the street out there answering the calls, and that officer can then go over to court and prosecute those complaints that we have.
So in other words, you could just pile those non-compliant together and go into court in one day, so that way you don't have to go in so many days in a week.
Correct, to make it efficient.
Right. I do agree that this is a a great request or a good request to have, because we have ordinance and we have 2 officers to, animal control officers to enforce it. It's not enough, as the sergeant indicated, so we need to have another one. And giving the report here, you know, I'm sure that, you know, if every dog owner was to, you know, register their dog and compliant with the ordinance, I can see the fee going down going forward if, you know, looking at the numbers. So with that said, Mr. Manager, let's say if our compliant, dog owner compliant go up, right, the number go up, would you come back to us and say, let's reduce the fee? Because now it's $10. Because I know it's going to go up if you have more people complying, pull their license, right?
Well, I think, Council, if you look at the amount of revenue that we actually bring in, we bring in $39,000. The cost of our 3 animal control offices are somewhere in the vicinity of $160,000. So effectively what we have is we have the taxpayers who don't own dogs subsidizing the costs of those that do have dogs. And by the way, I love dogs, so.
I know you do. I taking your word for it, but say if the number of dog owners come and get their license, would you come back to us? And if we really meet the cost for the 3 officers, would you come back to us and ask us to reduce the fee then?
If we brought in enough money, if we exceeded the amount of money that it costs to pay for our animal control operation, I would come back and urge you to reduce the fee.
I know it's a difficult deal to talk to you about reducing anything, particularly fee. So thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, Vice Mayor.
Council Laurie.
Thank you. After listening to the officer, I'll support it. But when you give a proposal like this and it's all about money, that's what bothers me. When I hear the police tell me they got 250 calls in the first 3 months of the year, well, that's important. When they tell me they have to staff on the weekends, that's important. But when I look at a proposal like this and it's all about money, that's what I have a problem with. But I will support it after listening to the officer. I would suggest next time using their reports and their figures instead of, you know. To me, it looked like a money grab.
Yeah, and I tried to be clear on that up front, and I will be cautious about that in the future. All I was attempting to do is, it's the only type of information we have that kind of shows how little we have in terms of licensing compared to other communities. But I'll take that advice.
If it was for police, I would have appreciated their report. But when I looked at this, I'm saying, boy, is this a money grab or what? But after listening to the officer, I'll support it.
But again, it's not a money grab because it doesn't even pay for the service.
Okay, thank you.
All right, at this point, we need a motion on the ordinance.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve by Councilor Mercer, second by Councilor Noon. Any other discussion? Roll call.
Councilor Martin.
Yes.
Vice Chair Madonza.
Yes. Yes.
Councilor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy. Councilor Nguyen.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilor Leahy.
Yes.
Councilor Laurie.
Yes.
8 yeas.
Motion is passed. Next on the agenda is the reports and subcommittees. And we have a report of the Public Safety Subcommittee. Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. The Public Safety Subcommittee met this evening. Again, we've been meeting the second Tuesday of each month to discuss a series of topics that were suggested by the Citywide Neighborhood Council. The topic this evening was health and building codes and their relationship to public safety. The other members of the subcommittee are Councilor Noon and Councilor Elliott. We had a pretty at least what I felt was educational for me, discussion about the difference between health and building codes. Those functions are separate in the city. We have 6 health inspectors that enforce primarily the state sanitary code. We have 4 building inspectors plus a commissioner who enforce the state building code. However, they are all under the Inspectional Services Department. There is cross-training that takes place so that certain inspectors can look out for potential issues that affect other inspectors' areas of expertise. There was also some discussion about implementation of the new inspection ordinance regarding residential rental units, and that matter is also going to be discussed at an upcoming meeting of the Housing Subcommittee. We also had in the discussion whether units that get inspections from other entities, primarily through Section 8, should continue to be exempt. But we're still in the process of rolling out even these initial inspections. So I think the sense from the neighborhood groups are that the ordinance is welcome and they're happy that it's being enforced. There's still a wait and see approach and maybe some trial and error that's going to take place, and we'll take up some of those issues at a future meeting of the Housing Subcommittee. Almost all the other members of the council that are here tonight were present, and so this is an issue that is of, I think, paramount interest to the City Council.
All right, do we have a motion to accept the report as report of progress by Council Leahy, second by Council Laurie? On the motion, Council Leahy.
Thank you. One of the speakers brought up, again, the point if you have a 2-family or 3-family and it's owner-occupied. I wasn't clear on that. I thought it was subject to inspection, but am I wrong on that when we passed the ordinance?
Mr. Slagle's still here.
Yes, the way that the ordinance is currently written, any rental unit in the city, that means any unit, either single family or within a multifamily building or complex, is required to have a permit, with the exception of units that the inspection's not required for units that have a HUD inspection, or units in owner-occupied 2 families. Okay. So since the only unit in an owner-occupied 2-family that would ever need to get a permit is the second unit that's the rental permit, that exemption means that neither of those units needs to get a permit.
Okay, because I missed that. I thought we were talking about not inspecting the owner's half because that was obvious. Right. So I think that needs to be looked at, because if it's a rental property, it's a rental property. So I don't know how that got by us, but I think that needs to be looked at.
Anyone else?
Just a
Councilor Kennedy.
Clarification, not for 2 families, but for 3 and 4 families, owner-occupied. For instance, a 3-family, what do you have to pay? You just pay for 2 units, right? You don't pay for the owner-occupied unit.
Owner-occupied units are not required to get a permit, so they do not pay the $50 fee. That's correct. So in a 3-family where the owner lives in one of the units, they would pay $100 and required to get 2 permits for their 2 rental units. So no owner-occupied unit in the city is required to get a permit because it's not a rental unit. It doesn't fall under the definition of the ordinance.
Okay, and are we behind as far as doing those inspections? We have a manpower problem for those?
Well, I don't know that I would call it a manpower problem. We have a lot of units in the city that we have to get to. Our goal is based on the way that I described it in the subcommittee a little bit. The way that we divided up the city for our proactive application requests was so that a third of the city would be submitting applications, a third of the addresses in the city would be submitting applications a year. That's about 2,000 addresses per year. Now, one address could have 2 units, one address could have 100 units, depending on the number of units in the location. if you break that down over 10 months, that's that's 200 addresses a month. That's 50 addresses a week. That's 10 addresses a day. It's challenging, but at this point, I don't know. I don't think we're at the stage at this point to say whether or not we have sufficient manpower or not, because we're still working on that.
Do you think 10 a day is challenging?
I think doing 10 addresses a day with six individuals is challenging because of all the other stuff that they have to do. Yes.
Are you backed up as far as inspections that you need to do? You backed up?
I mean, that's a good question. Because we're scheduling them ourselves. Our inspectors are proactively filling up their schedule with a portion of their schedule because they have lots of other things that they need to do. So they have a list of unscheduled inspections right now. Yes.
No, I didn't ask that. I said, are you backed up? I didn't ask if you had a list. I just wanted to know, are you backed up? The reason is that I got a call from someone that had a 6-family that paid their money up front, and then they were told they were going to have to wait 2 months for the inspection to be done. And their complaint to me was, why do I have to pay the money now if I have to wait 60 days for the inspection to be done? And they were told that the reason that they had to wait for the 2 months was that we were waiting to train people to go out and do the inspections. And so that is why I'm asking you, are you backed up?
Right. I think there may be a bit of miscommunication somewhere in the chain. Part of our implementation of this rental permit ordinance was putting it in our Munis system with the city. The training that was required to happen for the inspectors wasn't the training on doing the inspections. It was training on the Munis system because our health inspectors, this is their first foray into Munis. So we had to get them all trained, and we had to basically, with the MIS department, basically they had to write the program to implement this permit, the related inspection, any violations, the checklists that were associated, any mailings. This all had to be written into the system. And then all of the staff, not just the inspectors, but our clerical staff and the inspectors and myself, we all had to go through training in how to implement that. So people who applied at the very beginning, I rolled out the letters requesting applications before everyone was trained, in the hope that by the time they were trained, we would have a kind of a stash of inspections, so we wouldn't be waiting for them to trickle in after everybody had been trained on the system. So we requested our first notification went out in the first week of January. We started the inspections in the beginning of February. But the fact of the matter is, we knew at the time that we were going to get more inspection applications in. The inspection applications we're going to get in are going to, in theory, if everybody had applied, last us through November. I mean, that's how we had scheduled it. So if we got in a large number of applications, they're still being data entered into the system, and when we are calling to schedule those inspections, the inspectors are filling in their time. I have not heard any complaints from a landlord about them having to wait for an inspection after an inspector has called them to try to schedule it. As a matter of fact, more often than not, these landlords are requesting, as I think I mentioned in the subcommittee, some of them are requesting more time because they want to make sure their units are in order. Others are requesting more time simply because they're not available. So I don't think I would say that we're backed up. I would say that by design, we have a pool of, I think we've received, there's like 1,600 applications for permits that require inspections. Now, if we do, I mean, that's a lot of units, and we knew we weren't going to get to those the first week after we got the applications. That was going to take several months, to fill out all those applications.
So you don't think that inspections?
I don't think that I'm backed up. No, I think that this is by design. That being said, I'm still not sure that we have sufficient manpower to finish it up in one calendar year. But I don't have sufficient evidence at this point to say yay or nay. Hopefully, I'll have some soon.
Well, you must have, haven't you projected you must have an idea of whether you think you're gonna finish in the calendar year, don't you?
Well, I have some preliminary evidence. Part of the issue is that just like it's new to the clerical staff, it's new to the inspectors, not just the inspection and the scheduling, but more importantly, the resulting and the tracking in Munis, which is kind of the key to this piece, that we get everybody on a cycle to renew within 3 years. I believe that the inspectors will be more efficient as we go along. So I don't believe that what has happened during the first slightly over a month, you're talking about 4.5 weeks of inspections, is a fair estimate as to how their progress, I think, for the rest of the year.
I'm not necessarily being critical.
No,
I'm just saying, and this is just one story. I'm sure you've got stories that are totally different. But this was an owner-occupied, 6-family. They paid their money because they told if they didn't pay their money by a certain date, they'd be fined. But after they paid their money, they were then told that they had to wait for 2 months for the inspection of their units to be done. Their question to me was, why did I have to pay my money now under the penalty of a fine when it was going to take the city 2 months to come and inspect the units? So if you have to wait 2 months, and they were told that the reason that they had to wait 2 months was because of training. Now, it's just one story, but if you listen to that story, that would be that kind of would make you think that you backed up, or maybe that you don't have enough manpower, which is the only reason that I asked the question.
Right, I mean, I think...
Mr. Manager.
If I may.
Well,
Okay.
let me just, so you're passing on that one?
Well, I guess I think there's a kind of fundamental difference, I believe, between saying we're backed up and saying we plan to receive a large number of applications in January and it'll take a while
to... that for the first month or two that it was a little rough getting the thing up and running, and that you expect for it to be a lot more, to run a lot smoother as time goes on, and I would agree with that.
Right.
But the other thing that I wanted to ask you for an answer from before the city manager said anything was, do you think that by the end of the calendar year, you will have completed the inspections on 1/3 of the units?
I believe, honestly, that would be a challenging goal, in part because of re-inspections that we're going to have to do for recalcitrant owners. One of the issues is my best guess is that the individuals who applied first are the individuals whose units are in the best shape. And while we may get more efficient as the year goes on, we're likely to have to drag in owners kicking and screaming whose units are going to fail, and then that would trigger re-inspections. Yes. So I believe it would be very challenging for us to complete the entire 1/3 of the city that's on our plate for this year by the end of the year. I do believe that would be very challenging.
So my interpretation of that answer is that it means no, you don't think that. Doesn't mean it's going to happen, but right now, you don't think that we're going to do that, do you?
I am not a betting man, but if I had to bet, I would say we would be hard-pressed to finish the 1/3 of the city before the end of the year.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Manager.
Well, I guess I think it's pretty much all the answers are put out there. I guess I would say that it's a new program. We're only 4.5 weeks really into it. I mean, we started in January. We sent out the letters. I think that there's a sort of a learning curve that goes with that. We're evaluating as we go along, and that includes the potential that we will look at, again, as the budget comes up, we'll look at adding staffing in some form. What form that takes, we don't know yet because we need to see how we do. But I think that, this first year is a bit of a challenge. Everyone got the letters, they sent it in, and we schedule them out. I think looking forward, after we get through this first cycle, 3 years, we can stagger those mailings out a little bit differently. But the first one, it's harder to do that. Mm-hmm. So I think we're working on fine tuning as we go along, but it's a major undertaking.
Okay, and if you do need additional staff, which it sounds like maybe you do, mm-hmm. That's something that would be included in the next budget.
Correct.
Later on this year. Okay, thanks.
Council Lowry.
Thank you. just to the point, and the possible need for additional staffing, I think they're going to need it. Now, we're getting $50 a unit. Could we use that money to bring on new staff?
That's, again, similar to the other issue we just talked about a few minutes ago. The whole idea with the fees is to pay for the service. And I think actually one of the neighborhood leaders spoke to that issue tonight, in fact, at the subcommittee. But yes, that's where we see the revenue coming in that would offset the additional staffing.
And when I hear the statistics of 10 a day, it reminds me of the post office, and that's what put the post office in a hole, the statistics. Right now, if you do a building or a couple of buildings on one street that have 4 or 5, to do 10 in probably a morning wouldn't be hard. But there'll be days when you're staggered around the city where 5 will be difficult.
Right. Now, that 10 properties a day, again, it's just a very general number, and it's across the whole staff. It's not per inspector. So we have 5 inspectors who are doing this. The senior inspector has different duties that don't allow her to do this, but that's 5 inspectors. That being said, if one of the properties is a 100-unit building, it's going to be difficult to do more than that in a day.
My point is, if you do the easiest ones first, you'll do 10 easier. And it'll be a little bit more difficult down the road. I just think if we need the extra people, put in the budget, we take the $50 and move on and give you the staff you need to accomplish it. Thank you.
On the motion to accept the report and place on file as a report of progress, we already have a motion and a second. So all those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed say nay. Motion is carried. Councilor Orr, you have an announcement on the reports?
Yeah, I do have one report from Subcommittee Transportation. Actually, last week it was Councilor Elliott who asked if there was a date set for the bridge meeting, and it hadn't, but I did get an email maybe Thursday or Friday of last week. It's going to be on March 21st at 6 p.m. at Lowell General, and that will be the public meeting for the Vork Bridge. We have a advisory board meeting this week. I knew it would be coming up, but I think it was late last week. I did get an email saying March 21st at 6 p.m. at Lowell General, and I believe that's the final public hearing meeting on the Vork Bridge. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Leahy, you have a report about the Kearney Square Bridge meeting?
Yes, thank you. Last night I attended the meeting with Anel. I can't remember everybody's name that was there, but Officer Tim Crowley, Eric Eby from the city, State Representative Dave Nangle, and a few of the business owners, Attorney George Elides. We were happy to hear that the bridge plan now is back to 2 phases versus 3, so that was good. We just made our concerns, loud concerns for to make sure that there's ample delivery zones or services for the 2 restaurants and the coffee shop, the 3 restaurants in that area. So we just want to make sure that there are accommodations made for those businesses while the construction is happening basically right in front of their business. We voiced some issues, traffic concern issues, which Officer Crowley was there to address. So basically, I was happy to hear that it's in 2 phases. I did have one concern. I did run into the city engineer. The one question I had, maybe through the manager, or to the manager, she explained why maybe we couldn't get our portion of the sidewalk done at the same time. But I was just wondering if that's a matter of scheduling. I know there's different components to the 2 contracts. I just didn't know if there was, I think our side, the south side, is going to be done in the 2nd phase. So if there really was any way we could, to get the convenience of having the bridge done all at once, obviously it'd be great to have it all done at once. I didn't really quite follow the mentality of municipal government on how they do these projects, but I guess I would just ask that if there really was any way we could get our section done while the bridge is being done, obviously that would be the best thing. But other than that, so the bridge should be done hopefully in 6 months, which was good news. Thank you.
Mr. Manager?
I'm not sure it's necessarily the way municipal government is being run as much as it is.
I didn't mean you, I just meant.
How a construction project is being implemented, but we'll certainly see what we can do to have that happen.
Okay. Next, we have general petitions. Under claims, we have 2 claims for property damage and 1 for personal injury. A motion to refer to the Law Department and for report and recommendation by Council Noon, second by Council Mercier. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed say nay. Motion carries. Now we have the motions portion. First motion by Council Noon, request city manager have the proper department provide a report concerning pedestrian-related motor vehicle accidents over the period of the last 3 years to include the following: the number of accidents and accidents involving pedestrians, the location, the time of day, day of the week, age of the operator, and any other pertinent variables that would contribute to learning how we might lower the incidence of pedestrian-related accidents, including driver usage of personal communication devices while driving at the time of an incident. Second by Councilor Mercier. Councilor Noon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The motion actually specific enough or in detail, so it speaks for itself. Thank you.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed say nay. Motion's carried. Next motion by Councilor Noon. Request city manager have the proper department resurface the tennis courts and fix up or replace the nets on the O'Donnell Playground, which is the Butler School.
Second.
Second by Councilor Kennedy. Councilor Noon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the playground, particularly the tennis court, the net and the surface, probably need to resurface so that, to avoid any, accident and also across from the tennis court, the basketball court. I noticed that a couple of the court, they have no net on it. So I think not just for the O'Donnell, I think, now that summer is approaching, I'm not looking forward to any more snow. So summer approaching, that a lot of these parks, really we do need to look at to replace net or put on new one and taking care of so that our children can go and play after school hours. Thank you.
Councilor Leahy.
Thank you. With this request, could we just take a look at, I thought maybe the tennis courts up on Stevens Street didn't have nets last year. So maybe they were down at one point, but the one time I went by, the nets weren't there, so.
Mr. Manager.
We'll check on that. Generally, this is the time of year we go out and we do the check on the nets and do all that. And it's also some of these issues, the capital budget, the Parks Department has submitted their requests and they'll be compiled and we'll be looking at that.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed say nay. The motion carries. Next motion by Councilor Noon. Request city manager provide a report regarding ownership of vacant lot at corner of Branch and Middlesex Streets. Second by Councilor Mercier. Councilor Noon.
This parking space actually located at the 267 Branch Street. My understanding is that 1 hour parking is approximately 8 parking space, 1 handicap and 7 for others. I know that a number of people that call me and saying that their car being towed from that lot. Long that I realized I went there and saw a sign said, no parking, tow at owner spend or something like that. So I know that the city parking space, I don't know why their car being towed unless a business there put up sign, no parking or customer only. And if they do that, then it's not right for them to do that. It's public parking. It's a city-owned property, so, you know, we may need to talk to this, the owner or of the business there to take it down so that, you know, no other car, customer car being towed from that property. I know of 3 or 4 cars already being towed from there after they eat, so thank you.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Councilor Mercier, if you would take the chair.
Thank you. Next is a motion by Councilor Mendonça. City Council requests the city manager develop the means to address complaints of building and conservation code violations on weekends and after normal business hours. Seconded by Councilor Kennedy. Councilor Mendonça.
Yes, I made this motion at the request of complaint. Well, there was a complaint at a neighborhood meeting, and they brought up the fact that over the years they've seen a lot of instances where a contractor comes in, strips the roof on a Saturday, resurfaces it on a Sunday, and they're gone by Monday, and that oftentimes they haven't seen a permit being posted like it's supposed to. So they'd like to see the way to address that so people can complain and feel that they have it addressed. I added conservation because a similar thing can happen with driveways where they come in and they can resurface the driveway over a weekend and maybe not have the proper permits that might be needed with the Conservation Commission. So we don't know how big of a problem this might really be, so we might start off with a hotline and see how many complaints we get, and then maybe if we have enough, consider, like we did with the animal control officer, having someone that can service some of these calls over the weekend and maybe issue a cease and desist if they finds that they're not permitted, or maybe have some procedure in place so when we determine that it's unpermitted work, that maybe it needs to be undone as a disincentive to the kind of work being done. So that was the point of the motion, especially in light that we're approaching spring and a lot of this work will begin at that time.
Thank you. Councilor Leahy.
Thank you. I just have one thing to add. What a lot of companies do now is somebody's on call for the weekend and they have a pager. If you don't get paged, you don't get paid. So if it could work to be some sort of a, you address a call that comes in and a stipend or whatever goes out, that would be one way to solve an issue like this as far as the building permits go. So I'd just throw that suggestion out.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. All those opposed, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mercier. And now for the last motion of the evening by Councilor Mercier. Request city manager refer to traffic engineer a request for a stop sign at corner of West 3rd and Coburn Streets.
Second.
Second by Councilor Noon. Councilor Mercier.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. Motion speaks for itself. Thank you.
Councilor Laurie?
No.
No, okay. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. The motion is carried. Motion to adjourn by Councilor Kennedy, second by Councilor
Great job,
Laurie.
Joe. Great job. All right.
All those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. We stand adjourned. Thank you. We did that.